What's going on, everyone? Today I'm going to be giving you my non-spoiler review for Marvel's Thunderbolts. This is the brand new MCU film that just released, and I have a lot of thoughts about it. We're going to get through the positives, then we'll get into the negatives, and we'll give it a rating out of 10. Going into this film, I really wasn't sure what to expect. It wasn't a movie I was that excited for when it was first announced because the cast of characters in it are characters I like, but I don't really love. You know, there's obviously a few in there like Bucky that I really love, but a couple of the other ones I just never really had that much interest in. I was definitely curious to see where the stories were going to go, but to have a whole movie about them, I was definitely skeptical. But once they started to show us trailers of the movie, it genuinely looked really incredible. Every single trailer was phenomenal. The marketing for this movie was honestly some of the best marketing Marvel has ever had, so I was immediately excited for it. And then the early reviews were saying this is a fantastic film, the best movie since Endgame for Marvel. So I was really excited for it. And I will say, going into it, the hype was definitely warranted. Let's just get right into the positives. This movie is probably the best looking MCU film to date. I really sat down and thought about it, but I really couldn't think of another MCU film that looks as good as this. Maybe Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I was thinking maybe the original Iron Man, at least like for its time. But this movie, I think, just handles the look so damn well. And I don't mean visuals in terms of like the CGI. I mean, the CGI looks great when they use it. But in terms of how the film looks, especially in IMAX, it was kind of breathtaking. It was so well directed. There are some incredible shots. It probably has the most amount of great shots out of any MCU film. There's action sequences that are mostly one take. They don't have that problem of, you know, having a million different cuts in the action scenes, which everyone always hates when action scenes do that, and myself included. They actually had action scenes that just showed the action for like a minute straight at some points without cutting whatsoever, and it looked so great. I'm not one of those people that thinks that Marvel is usually just low quality slop. Is there some stuff that feels like they cut corners quite a bit? Yes. I loved Deadpool and Wolverine, but it did feel like it cut corners in some places. It felt like there was things that just could have looked so much better, things that could have been choreographed much better, but it felt like, this is a movie that's probably going to do well anyway, so we can cut corners for it. Captain America Brave New World kind of felt sort of similar in some places where it's, you know, it's a good movie. I loved the movie, but at the same time, where there's some places where they cut corners, yes, they definitely could have made this film a lot better. And Thunderbolts, I never really felt that way at all. It felt like it was a complete vision from a director, from writers that just knew what they wanted to do, and they just delivered on it. It doesn't felt like any corners were cut whatsoever. It felt like every choice was made deliberately, maybe minus one or two things, which we'll talk about in the negatives, but majority of it really just felt like it was a vision being delivered, which is something that I really, really want out of comic book movies, and especially MCU movies, because it's one of those issues that I feel like a lot of MCU movies just haven't been able to nail. A lot of them had that problem where it felt like it was being made by the studio. It felt like there was too much, you know, studio meddling going on, like reshoots and all this other stuff happening. This did not feel that way. This felt like it was a film that someone really cared about. They really wanted to tell a damn good story. And Jake Schreier, who was the director for this film, definitely delivered on that vision. And what brings all of the great directing and writing together was the amazing soundtrack by Sun Lux. And I've actually never heard of this group before, but they've done some other films as well, like Everything Everywhere All at Once. And they did an amazing job on this soundtrack. There is one piece of music that was played towards the very end of the film into the credits, and it genuinely is one of my favorite pieces of music from any Marvel movie ever. It's been stuck in my head ever since I saw the movie, and it won't leave my brain. It's that good. It's so damn, like, it sends chills down your spine. Like, such a great soundtrack, and most of the movie soundtrack was pretty damn great. I was just so impressed with it. There's a lot of good practical stunts. You can clearly tell they spent a lot of time on those stunts. Like I mentioned before, the action scenes all look really great. Everything just feels so damn good. And in a lot of ways, this felt like a classic MCU film. Now, again, I don't hate the recent MCU films. I've liked a lot of Phase 4 and 5 movies from Marvel, but This felt a lot more like a phase 2 or phase 3 movie. It felt like I was watching The Winter Soldier, or, you know, parts of it kind of felt like Guardians of the Galaxy. Parts of it felt like Captain America Civil War. It really felt like a classic MCU film in terms of the pacing, the comedy, the writing, the directing. A lot of it felt more similar to those films. And even in terms of the vision of it, the fact that it felt like it knew what it was doing, it knew what it was building up to, and it knew what it wanted to be in the future. Like it kind of understood the place it had in the MCU, and I felt like the earlier movies did that so well. This movie feels that way. It feels like Marvel's back on track when it comes to what they're planning next. Again, I have loved a lot of the Marvel movies from the past couple years, but it felt like this is the one that was the most on track out of any of them. Writing wise, there is some incredible storytelling going on here with a lot of the characters and a lot of the themes that I really connected to. There was a pretty significant theme of mental illness and redemption, and not letting your past mistakes kind of eat you up, and not letting that dark side of yourself overtake you and take away all the positivity out of yourself and all the good parts of yourself. So much of that was actually really powerful, and I think not a lot of Marvel movies have covered that topic so heavily, but this one really, really did. And it made sense for this movie because the cast of characters are all characters that have done bad things before. They've all made, you know, pretty bad mistakes. They're not all necessarily villains, you know, some of them are more so villains, some of them are more so anti-heroes. They're definitely kind of a mix of the both, but it works so well because all these are characters that can definitely be redeemed. They're not just pure evil characters that obviously you can't see any redemption in them. They all have the possibility to be redeemed, and that's what this movie's all about. And I think that's powerful. I really do. I think that's an important aspect of humanity, to be able to change, to be able to become something different. And this movie covers that pretty heavily, and it all relates to the villain. That's what I love about it more than anything, is that all of it goes back to the main villain of Sentry and the whole concept of the void and what it means to the characters. And it is actually really, really well done. And speaking of the characters themselves, let's go over each of them and just give my thoughts on how those characters were in the film. Florence Pugh's Yelena was outstanding. I think this is by far her best portrayal of this character ever. Of course, she hasn't been, you know, in that many other projects before. She was in the Hawkeye series and she was in Black Widow, but this is by far the best she's ever been. She was outstanding. I think she is definitely the best character in this movie. In a lot of ways, this is her movie. Like, if you are going to name one character that's the lead of the film, it is Yelena. This is honestly, in a lot of ways, you could have called this movie Yelena. It kind of would have made sense. I'm not even kidding. And I'm fine with that because she is great. She is definitely one of the more interesting characters here. So I was all on board with her having such a significant part to play in the movie. And I mean, she is our new Black Widow, basically, right? Obviously, she's very different than Black Widow. I'm not saying she's the same as her, but in a lot of ways, that type of character, she is kind of our new version of that. And it's awesome to see her there, especially her scenes with her father, Alexei. I absolutely loved their scenes. I think their dynamic was probably the best part of this movie when it comes to character dynamics specifically. Lewis Pullman as Bob was amazing. Like, another character that I just thought was so damn good, so interesting, and again, fit the theme of the movie so well. And like I said, Yelena had great scenes with Lexi, but her scenes with Bob were honestly just as good, especially in some of the earlier parts of the film. I was so attached to their connection, and again, it was so important for the overall theme of the movie. They really balanced each other out quite well. Then, of course, the rest of the team, you have John Walker returning from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series, and I was really excited for him, and honestly, he's pretty good in this. He's kind of similar as he was before. He's very cocky, very arrogant, but he's a hero when he needs to be, and he still cares about the other characters here, and the bond that he has with some of these other characters is a very unlikely bond to happen, but it works. It really does work. You also have Ghost and Taskmaster, which these are two characters that were probably the characters I was least excited to see, but I don't hate them in this movie. I think Ghost was definitely much better. I didn't really care for Ghost that much in Ant-Man 2, so getting to see her again here was kind of cool. I think it was a cool way to have that character return. And same with Taskmaster. I didn't care too much about her in Black Widow. I mean, she was a decent villain in that, but in this movie, yep, definitely had some stuff to do that I thought was pretty cool. And then of course there's Bucky, which unfortunately we're going to save Bucky for the negative section because we'll get into that. Valentina is a great villain. She was fantastic. I think she is one of the more interesting super powered hero characters in the MCU at this point. And I like that they even found a way to tie her into the main plot in an interesting way as well. And I also love how much of this movie was basically a psychological thriller. Like there was even some scenes that felt like they were straight out of a horror film. Like I felt like I was watching A Nightmare on Elm Street in some of the scenes. And that was awesome. So I really appreciated the psychological horror of this movie. Yes, most of it is more of an action thriller, but the scenes that go more into the psychological stuff, I was definitely on board with. I thought it was really, really cool. I also got to mention the comedy. The comedy was actually really good. Marvel has definitely had a problem with bad humor in the past where it's either just not funny or it's forced humor, it's slapsticky, just doesn't fit the scene, it takes away from the emotion. This movie does not have that problem. It's a really funny movie with a lot of hilarious moments. There's a lot of scenes with Alexei specifically that had me dying of laughter, and it never really takes away from the emotion. There's so many other great emotional scenes that aren't ruined. There's even a scene that made me tear up. So clearly the movie has a lot of emotion going on, but there's enough time for the laughter, there's enough time for the jokes, and it fits, it works, and it was great. And lastly, for the positives, the post-credit scene is pretty awesome. Now, I'm going to be very clear on this though. Do not get overhyped for the post-credit scene because I feel like people overhyped it a bit too much for me personally. Like people were acting like it was the craziest thing the MCU ever did. And so when I was going to see it, I was like, oh my God, what are we going to see? I'll tell you right now, just to kind of set your expectations a bit more properly, it's not the most insane thing ever. It is not that surprising necessarily, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still a great post-credit scene. Like it actually sets things up properly in a way that makes sense and is definitely going to be fulfilled. Whereas a lot of other post-credit scenes in the MCU don't go anywhere and are just kind of feel like they're just thrown in there for whatever reason. But this actually felt like a solid post-credit scene that was like, oh shit, like this is definitely showing what's coming next, and it's actually setting things up properly. A lot of people were worried about like, how are they going to be setting up for the future of the MCU? There's so much going on, especially for the Avengers movies. How are they going to set up for that? And this post-credit scene definitely gives you a lot of, I wouldn't say it gives you a lot of answers. It definitely gives you a sort of outline of what's to come next, and I thought it was pretty cool. But I will say, do not read the credits in this film. If you read the soundtrack section of the credits, the end credits, it will actually spoil that post-credit scene. So just don't read it. Just don't. Now, getting into the negatives, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to talk about Bucky because he's the only character in this movie that I was genuinely disappointed by. He is my favorite character out of this group. He is the character I was most excited to see. And I do feel like they underutilized him. Not in terms of screen time. He is in a lot of the movie. He is obviously there for a while. But in terms of the story, I really sat down and tried to think about it, but there really isn't much story-wise that he had to do in the movie. You could have taken him out of the film and it probably wouldn't have changed that much, aside from some of his connections to some of the characters, obviously with him now being a congressman. That's really all that mattered. But his insanely dark past of being the Winter Soldier and what that meant to him and what it caused in his life and all the pain that it caused, they don't explore it whatsoever. And obviously I was mentioning before with the whole theme of redemption and your past eating you up, that's a pretty substantial theme that they do a great job of showing that for the other characters. Even John Walker has more of an importance in the story in regards to that. Yelena, obviously more than anyone. They do a lot with those characters, but why is Bucky just kind of there? Like, I mean, maybe I missed it, but I didn't really understand what his story importance was in this besides being like, okay, yeah, sure, Bucky's there. That's cool. Like, that's about it though. But I feel like Bucky had a more of attachment to the story. Why didn't he have more to do? And I feel like the reason might have been because they felt like they've been there, done that with Bucky. I mean, he already had, he just had a whole TV series recently with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He had Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Captain America, Civil War, both that were significantly about him. They probably felt like it's time to give other characters some important stuff, you know what I mean? but like, it's Bucky, you know what I mean? They should have done more with him. There's definitely some great scenes. The motorcycle scene, which was in the trailers, is probably one of the best scenes in the movie. I fucking love that scene. It was so awesome, so badass. But it has nothing to do with the story, right? It's not like a story important moment for him. It's just a cool badass moment. Why doesn't Bucky have more to do in the story? I don't really get it. He doesn't even have like a significant connection to any of the characters in this movie either, except for John Walker, because they have a past, obviously. But even that is not really focused on that heavily. They have one line of dialogue towards each other, and that's kind of it. They don't have any other thing that happens with them going forward. Bucky could have easily just been replaced with anyone else, and I think it would have worked just fine. Again, the only part about him that was necessary was the whole congressman part. But even then, I feel like he could have taken that out. So I just unfortunately really was disappointed by Bucky in this movie. And it's especially frustrating because Sebastian Stan is such a great actor, especially as Bucky. But like, they don't really give him many like acting heavy moments. You know what I mean? Like, Yelena has a lot. Alexei has a lot. Obviously, Bob has a lot. Even Ghost has a couple moments. Like, there's definitely moments there for those characters. John Walker does. Bucky kind of just... he doesn't have anything like that in this movie. You know, he's just there. He's there as Bucky. But like, there was no moments where it's like, oh, that's a moment for Bucky. You know what I mean? And I just don't get why. The movie isn't that long. It's 2 hours long, like on the dot. They could have made it 2 hours, 10 minutes and added like a couple extra scenes with Bucky. And honestly, it would have made this movie a lot better for me. That's all I need, is just a couple more moments, a couple more scenes with him and the other characters. And I don't want to spoil obviously anything, so I'm not going to specifically say like why he doesn't have as much of a connection to the other characters in this film, but there is a pretty significant reason as to why he doesn't. There's a whole thing that happens in the first half of the film, and it kind of explains why there isn't much of a connection that he has with the other characters. And so I think that definitely hurts the film a little bit, but still loved everything else about it. Just to be clear, when I say he doesn't have a significant connection to any of the characters, I mean over the course of the film. Obviously, in the beginning of this film, most of the characters do not have a significant connection with each other. That's kind of the whole point of the film, but even over the course of the movie, I never felt like he ever got a full connection to any of the other characters, whereas a lot of the other characters do. So now, giving this film a rating out of 10, I'm going to say 9 out of 10. I think it definitely has potential to go up on a rewatch. I think not having any prior expectations could help with that. But yeah, I'm so happy this movie ended up being as good as it was. I just really hope Marvel stays on this course of just really trying to make the film as damn good as possible. And I really hope people actually go see this movie, and I hope it makes a lot of money at the box office, because I want Marvel to hear the message that people want damn good, well-made movies that don't feel like they're having a bunch of corners cut. Again, I really liked Deadpool and Wolverine. I enjoyed parts of Captain America Brave New World, but I don't want to see these corners being cut. I don't want to see the movies being kind of rushed out and just kind of not a full vision for what the director wanted for the film. It's not what I want. I want a movie like this, a movie that really feels like it was a passion project from the creatives, and they were just given the ability to do whatever the hell they wanted, and they managed to also make it fit into the universe in a way that works so well. I want more stuff like this. I really hope Fantastic Four is that. I hope, you know, obviously the Avengers movies are great in terms of just how they're made. I know a lot of people are worried about those movies, but if they get the right message from this, I think they're going to try their hardest to actually make that a damn solid film. And yeah, like I said, please go see this movie. It is definitely worth the watch. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I will see you all in my next one. Peace out.